Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Jake Kopstick as we get closer and closer to the season. Today, we're going to preview the Big East Conference. We're also going to have a guest later on, Dante Maddox, the shooting guard who transferred from Toledo after an excellent season last year with the Rockets. Jake, how you doing?
Rich, we're doing well. 6 days from literally wherever you are right now, we're going to be watching hoops. We're going to be watching college hoops. I'll be at LaSalle. Very much looking forward to it. And at this point, I'm like almost getting tired of talking about it. I just want games. You know what I mean? I want the season to start.
Yeah. When is the Jersey Jam?
That is Friday. What is that? The 8th or the 9th? If the 4th is a Monday, it's that Friday in Trenton, and it's Loyola Chicago and is playing Duquesne, and Temple is going to be playing Monmouth. And is it still called Cure Insurance Arena?
Wait, I thought it was Princeton. Princeton's there.
Might be. Might get. Yeah. That'd be an A10 game. I'm an idiot. Yes, it is Princeton and Duquesne. Princeton and Duquesne. Okay. Is it still called Cure Insurance Arena in Trenton? I've never been before.
I've never been. So is it just a one-day event, not a multiple-day event?
Yeah, just a doubleheader.
Okay.
Doubleheader, from what I understand.
Because I was invited to that, and I think I'm going to go, but I'm not 100% certain. I haven't heard anything about it since I was invited. So yeah. Anyway.
Well, if you can't go, I know somebody that maybe could fill in for you that day.
Oh yeah? Who?
Yeah. I don't know. I know him pretty well a little bit. This guy. It's me. I would like to go in your absence if you can. Just something to think about. Just something to think about.
Well, why didn't you? I talked to you about it before, and you said you.
I'm still getting my schedule in order. Definitely at LaSalle.
Yeah.
I would like to go. I think that's the first Temple game I'm going to be able to go to because I don't think I'm not going to make the 5:30 game Monday. They're playing a doubleheader. So the men are at home against Sacred Heart at 5:30. And then I think the women are actually playing Richmond, I want to say, at 8 p.m. Richmond's supposed to be women's basketball, supposed to be really good in the Atlantic 10 this year. So nice men's, women's doubleheader at Temple, but the men of the 5:30 game. I'm going to be at LaSalle for the first game in the new arena when they open against American. So I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. So I think that's the first Temple game I'll be able to go to live is the Jersey Jam potentially. So I will keep you updated on that.
Okay. Still might be able to get credentials. I mean, whether I'm going or not, but yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I have to get my schedule straightened out too because I'm going to be going to a certain amount of Rutgers games, Princeton games, Seton Hall, St. John's games. So yeah, I got to figure it all out. So all right, so let's move on to the Big East. And no realignment in the conference. And the only coaching change is Chris Holtman, who was fired, I guess, mid-season last year, right? Replaces
it was towards the end, but there was certainly still some season left.
Yeah, and it replaces Tony Stubblefield, who was fired at DePaul. Of course, the regular season champ was UConn. They also won the conference tourney, so they got the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament, and they were the number 1 overall seed. Marquette was a 2 seed. Creighton was a 3 seed. And, of course, UConn won the national championship for the second consecutive year. The player of the year was Devin Carter from Providence. The defensive player of the year for the 3rd year running was Ryan Kalkbrenner. And the freshman of the year was Stefan Castle from UConn. I was just at Big East Media Day. A lot of the players we'll be discussing today. I I talked with at length. I had I should have maybe done a little more homework. The Big East really sent me zero information other than to say the starting time of the event. And so I had in my mind, it was going to be like a huge press conference in that teams are going to be coming on, they were going to be introduced, there would be a question and answer period. Maybe they'd have, kind of like after a game where the coach speaks for a while, then there's a question and answer period, and then another team would come in. No, that's not how it worked. It was like the Super Bowl, where everybody was spread all over the garden floor. And so I wasn't, in my head, I was going to get to ask like one question per team. I didn't think I was going to be able to just stand there and talk to Ryan Kalkbrenner forever, but that's what happened. I talked to Kalkbrenner for like 15 minutes. Which it was surprising everybody. It was like 4 or 5 deep around Connecticut, and every other team, the reporters just surrounded Connecticut like 4 or 5 deep. Every other team, you could just go up and talk to whomever. No problem. No problem. Kalkbrenner, 3-time defensive player of the year, and was just picked conference player of the year. And there was like nobody around the Creighton table. I also talked to Stephen Ashworth forever. So it was incredible. A lot of guys were just sitting there on their phones while everybody's over there talking to UConn. And I just thought that was kind of amazing. And also, UConn was picked to win the conference championship, or was picked to win the conference. And I'm not so sure it's such a lock. I mean, everyone's treating it as like a lock that Connecticut's going to win again. I don't think it is. So we'll start off with them. And so basically, UConn lost Donovan Clingan, Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, Stefan Castle, all to the pros. They bring back Alex Caraban, Hassan Diarra, who may have been 6th man of the year in this conference.
I think he was 6th man.
Yeah, I think he was 6th man. Samson Johnson, the backup center from last year. And then they have about 4 guys that didn't see a lot of playing time, but all were high recruits. I think they're all sophomores too. Jalen Stewart, Solomon Ball, Jaden Ross, Yusafa Signori. All those guys were high recruits and are now going to be in line for playing time. In the portal, they hit 2 significant players. Aiden Mahaney from St. Mary's, who kind of had a disappointing sophomore season. And Travis Reed, who I believe is he a sophomore or a junior?
He's a junior.
Is he a junior now? But he too was a very high recruit for Michigan a few years ago. A huge big man, more of a traditional big than Samson Johnson, where Samson is kind of like a real athletic rim runner. Travis Reed is more of a low block type of guy. And then, of course, Connecticut also really did well in the recruiting. Freshmen, starting off with Liam McNeely, number 17 in the composite rankings. He's a small forward. Amand Noel, a point guard, number 37 in composite. And Isaiah Abraham, number 76 in the composite. He's a wing. So, what do you make of this UConn team? Are you thinking they're a lock to win the conference?
I wouldn't say they're a lock because I think that the conference is going to be very strong again, as the Big East always is. But I think they're still the clear-cut favorite. Not going to go against. Look, they just won back-to-back national championships. I'm not going to put them anywhere but first right now. Dan Hurley deserves that benefit of the doubt, deserves that vote of confidence. I like what they brought in. Samson Johnson's awesome. What an athlete he is. I mean, he just dunks everything. Everything he has is a freaking dunk. So they bring in a really good athlete like him. And look, Clingan was awesome, but it wasn't like a seismic fall off when Samson Johnson had to come on the floor. Like this was still a good team with him on it. But I like that they brought in Tarris Reed. They brought in another center that's got some college experience. I think Aiden Mahaney's going to be really good. They need a table setter. He can shoot, and he's already a guy that's been like at the front of scouting reports. Now this is quite the jump he's making from the WCC to the Big East, but I do think he'll be very, very good here. And then losing a sharpshooter like Cam Spencer, you're bringing in a guy who can shoot high 30s, maybe 40% right away, and Liam McNeely. So they did fill in what they had to. I like what they have at center. They added some depth there. They needed a starting point guard. They needed some shooting. And I like these guys coming off the bench. I think Solo Ball is in line for a really big year this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Another guy that I really liked what I saw was Jaden Ross, or excuse me, Jalen Stewart at the Big East tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Came off the bench, made some good plays, scored when he had to, just kind of did the dirty work and made some winning plays in some big time games in March for them in the Big East tournament. So they have the best coach currently in the sport. And I like what they brought back. They're still going to be very competitive. And Rich, I do think they have a real shot to three-peat. I don't know if they will, but I don't see a fall off here. They're still going to be a competitive team that can play very deep into the tournament.
Well, I got to disagree. I think Klingon is significantly better than Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tristan Newton is significantly better than Diarra. I think Cam Spencer is significantly better than Mahaney. Mahaney, he did well as a freshman, but that was as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And last year he was hugely disappointing. And I you hate to say it about if somebody's only played 2 years of college ball, but right now in my book, he's overrated. Caravan is a good player, and McNeely should be a really good player, but the rest of these guys, good players, but who's the star on this team? I just think they're taking a step back. I mean, but you look at those three freshmen, 1 5-star, 2 4-stars, and then you got 4 4-stars that were sitting around last year not playing much, including the guy you pointed out, Stewart, who played the best of the 4. So right there you got 7 4-stars or 6 4-stars, 1 5-star. So, is the potential there? Certainly. But I really think still you really need some veteran leadership. And I don't think Mahaney's going to play poorly. I just don't know if he's going to be the stud everybody thinks he's going to be. And Caravan, I just don't think he's the type of player that's going to carry a team. Yeah. So I just think they lost a lot, and some of these young guys are really going to have to step up. So a team that I think is being underrated is the next one I'd like to discuss, and that's St. John's. And they lost a ton for the second year in a row, but not as much as the year before. And Rick Pitino, has some guys coming back, brought in some really nice guys from the portal, and also had a pretty nice recruiting class. So who they lost, the big names were Dennis Jenkins, point guard in the pros now, Joe Soriano, the big center, moved on to the pros. Other names worth noting, Chris Leadham went to the pros. Jordan Dingle went to the pros. Those are the biggest names. Interestingly, Jordan Dingle was among one of several players who tried to sue the NCAA to get another year of eligibility.
Chris Ledler was in that lawsuit as well.
Right. Okay. But they all ended up getting jobs right now that they're all, both of those guys are playing in Europe. So, all right. So who comes back? RJ Luis played really well for the team last year. Zuby Ejiofor, a former high recruit from Kansas. He played very well when he got a chance, only averaged about 13 minutes a game last year. Simeon Wilcher Very high recruit. 4-star, was like a top 40 guy last year. He struggled, but again, didn't see a ton of playing time. Uh, Brady Dunlap had his moments last year. In fact, I think he got some starts, but then he kind of fell off. He comes back for his sophomore year, I believe.
Yep.
And then in the portal, Kadari Richmond, one of the best players in the Big East, comes over for Seton Hall. And I specifically heard Kadari talking about, well, maybe we'll get into that as we analyze the team more, but I got a point something I overheard Kadari say. Davion Smith, who went crazy last year at Utah, the stat sheet in a number of different ways, also comes in to join that backcourt. Aaron Scott, one of my favorite mid-major players from North Texas, comes over. He's a great defender, can do a little bit of everything. And Vince Iwachukwu, a former 5-star, USC, had the heart issues. He had a decent sophomore season, but still not nearly touching the potential that we thought he had. But maybe this is the year. And then in terms of freshmen, they bring in Ruben Prey. He'd be the equivalent in this country of a 5-star. He played for Balladana in Spain. He was right up there with UCLA's what is it?
Ade Mara.
Yeah, Ade Mara, in terms of, they consider those two very close, though Prey is more of has more ability to shoot than Mara, at least at this stage. He could be more of a power forward / center. They also bring in Jaden Glover, who's a wing, number 55 in the composite, and Kamon Maker, who is a center at number 131, and I didn't check to see if he is one of the Maker brothers.
Not sure. But I love this team, Rich.
Yeah,
they're going to be in the top 25 very soon. They can make a deep run in March. Preseason poll had UConn 1, Creighton 2, Xavier, then Marquette, then St. John's. There's a world that exists where St. John's, and you can swap St. John's and Xavier out, and that's what I actually think is going to happen. Is St. John's going to finish above them and finish at 3 or maybe 2. There's a shot this is the second best team.
I think maybe 1, because I had to sit down last night and decide who I wanted to put first on this list, St. John's or UConn.
They are going to give them a run for their money, I think. This is going to be one of the best defensive teams in the country. This is already one of the best defensive perimeters that you have on Kadari Richmond and Davon Smith. They are going to eat people up. You add an RJ Lewis there as well.
And what about Scott? Scott was one of the best defenders in the American.
I didn't want to get to him quite yet. I wanted to talk about their guards and their 1 through 3 first. Whether you want to defend the ball, Kadari Richmond on both ends of the court is a mismatch nightmare. He can lock up smaller players, and he is an absolute mismatch for having the size he does at point guard. Like when they have to play Jameer Brickus, who's going to be one of the smaller guys in this conference, or you have to play Jaden Pierre, and that's your point guard. He can guard up and down the lineup, Kadari Richmond. Press, man-to-man, half-court, full court, whatever. Having 2 guys that can guard the ball as well as Davon Smith and Kadari Richmond, that Rick Pitino has at his disposal, they're going to be able to throw a lot of different looks at you. I saw them do it at Villanova. They would play some zone. They played really good man, but then they pressed after made baskets and made free throws. They're going to be able to throw all of that at you with these guys. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here because Rick Pitino said this a shit ton after the season. Obviously, there was that infamous press conference where he was like, Chris Ledlam and Soriano, these guys are all slow laterally, and we don't have anybody that can guard the perimeter in any of these bigs. Well, you certainly have a guy in Aaron Scott now who can guard anybody on defense, who's going to be able to switch when you play in man and guard smaller players and guard ball handlers. So his addition to this team was huge and was very funny when it happened, because this isn't a guy you're going to say is slow laterally at all, coming from the North Texas defense. And I think the key to this team hitting its ceiling and potentially challenging UConn at the top of this conference, I think the guards are going to be great. Simeon Wilcher, too. I didn't even touch on him and Brady Dunlap now coming into their second seasons. Brady Dunlap apparently added a lot to his body. They need shooting on this team. He's going to be crucial as a floor spacer and a shooter. And Sim Wilcher, how about this? He started the charity exhibition against Rutgers, and it sounds like he's got a starting spot lined up. And it's just like there's these older players where I know what I'm going to get. And I think that like they have two huge upside pieces here with Brady Dunlap and Sim Wilcher, but I think a huge, even bigger upside guy than them is Zuby Ejiofor.
Right.
You lose a double-double machine in Joel Soriano down low. You need Zuby Ejiofor and Iwuchukwu to produce for you. And from what I saw Zuby Ejiofor do in that charity exhibition against Rutgers, he was huge on both sides of the floor on the glass, and he got anything he wanted offensively. If Zuby Ejiofor can give you, all he needs is like 10 and 8. I think he's going to be serviceable. He's going to have a good year, and that's going to be key.
I think he's going to be more than serviceable. I think
he could potentially be an all-league player in the Big East. They are very tantalizing, this team. I know they're going to have defense. There's upside here. There's experience. There's a whole lot to like about this team, Rich. I think they're going to go dancing. They're going to leave no doubt this time. They're not going to lose to a bid stealer, and they can play very deep into the NCAA tournament.
Right. I actually talked to Zuby for a while, this week or last week, and he said that it's conceivable that he and either Iwuchukwu or he and Prey could be on the court at the same time at sometimes. Because I asked, I said, man, you got 3 quality centers on your team. Who's, any chance you guys are going to play together? And he said yes. So, and as I was talking to Zuby, I overheard Kaderi Richmond explaining to another reporter how the main reason why he came to St. John's is Rick Pitino's reputation for helping players develop a shot. And he said that his shooting motion is going to be significantly different this year, and he plans to be a better shooter. So that is the one thing that has prevented Kadari from being probably a high-level pro prospect, is the fact that, he certainly has the size, certainly has the ability to score inside. The question is, can he shoot? Can he shoot from anywhere outside of 12 to 15 feet? Because he does take a lot of mid-range shots. So that was interesting news. And so at that point, we'll move on to Creighton, who's next on our list. Of course, they lose Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander were the big losses. Of course, Kalkbrenner comes back, Stephen Ashworth comes back, Mason Miller, Jason Green, who came on at the end of last year, Isaac Trout, who didn't get a lot of run, but former high recruit, stretch 4, Frederick King, who's always done a solid job of backing up Kalkbrenner. They bring in Pop Isaacs, who should be hopefully should be a plug-and-play option for Trey Alexander. They also bring in Jemiah Neal, who Stephen Ashworth told me. I said, Steve, you guys are probably the best shooting team in the Big East, but all you guys can shoot, but who's going to play defense? It was the end of the day. I could ask free questions. So he brought up Jemiah Neal, the transfer from Arizona State, who's a wing. So interesting that this team also had a pretty nice recruiting in terms of freshmen, though I put freshmen in quotes when I talk about Fedor Zugic. Fedor is I would say, when he first came out, when he was like 18 years old, people probably considered him a top 5 prospect in his age group. He hasn't quite lived up to that, but this kid's been playing in the German BBL for like 7 years, and he's like 21. So this kid has a ton of experience at high level, hasn't quite hit the expectations. When he was 18, I think everyone thought he was another a Wagner, but it hasn't quite turned out that way. But still, I really think he's kind of like has the ability to be a really good replacement for Baylor Shireman. Problem is he has a little bit of a shoulder injury right now, and he hasn't been cleared by the NCAA because of all that pro experience. I don't know what they have to figure out, but he doesn't even have a class right now. They don't even know if he's a freshman, sophomore, junior, what he's going to be classified as. And I clarified that with the SID at Creighton, and he said, yep, with the NCAA not only has to rule whether he's eligible, they also have to tell us what class he's in. So he may not be a freshman. He could be a junior. All right. The rest of the recruiting class includes Jackson McAndrew, a top 40 guy who's looking really good. Creighton guys were talking about him at Media Day, and also he just came off a pretty nice scrimmage against, I forget whom. And they have a couple other guys that were 4-star Larry Johnson, a shooting guard, 3-star Ty Davis, a combo guard, are also on the squad. So, another question I asked Stephen Ashworth, and then I'll let you go, Jake, was I said, when you look at you guys, all offensive-oriented guys, except for Ryan, I said, how is it that you guys managed to really be a good defensive team? And he basically just talked about team concepts, working together, communicating. And so despite these guys not being like your long, quick athletes, they still managed to play really good defense. And another guy they mentioned was the freshman McAndrew. So this team should be solid defensively again and have a ton of shooters.
Yeah, and look, when you have Kalkbrenner on your team, like you're automatically going to be one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best 2-point defenses in the country. He is like, because he really only takes shots in the paint and he blocks everything and he alters everything. Like stat wise, like metric wise, is probably the best player in the country. I think Ken Pom had him as the MVP the last 2 years, and he's won the most Ken Pom MVP of games. So the defense isn't going to go anywhere. This guy's going to win 4 straight Defensive Player of the Years. I don't know who else you'd give it to. And then offensively, they're going to spread you out. They're going to run really good offense, and they're going to play fast, and they're going to play in transition. And when they have Mason Miller and Ashworth and then these guys that can sprint to the wing and transition and shoot, they're a very, very hard team to play against, especially at home. And I like the Pop Isaacs edition more than I like the Jemiah Neal edition. Excuse me, to have another guy that you could pair with Ashworth on the offensive end, I think will be good for this team. I really like Jason Green. I think Jason Green breaks out for this team a little bit this year, potentially as a starter or definitely as a 6th man on this team. Can be really, really good. With his size and his versatility, came on last year in the Villanova game, he played pretty well, and then down the stretch he did. So the ceiling for them is pretty high, but the floor is very high. This is going to be a good team regardless. If Kalkbrenner, God forbid, an injury happens to him, and he's talking about a different story, but if he stays healthy, this is a perennial top 25 team. It'll stay that way. They can make another second weekend in the tournament. Defensively, you have probably the most impactful single defensive player, not only in the country this year, but maybe the last 5 years, with how he can anchor a defense that maybe doesn't have a bunch of lockdown defenders outside of him. Still going to be very solid, Rich. Even though they did lose quite a bit with 2 of your best scorers and Alexander and Shireman leaving, still going to be really good. As long as Mr.
Playmakers too. Both of those guys could play make.
Yeah, Shireman, I'm so glad he got picked in the first round because he really was a damn good player and deserved it. He's got an NBA game. I think he'll be a player for the Celtics.
Kalkbrenner, by the way, I asked him what he had been. He told me this was the first summer in a while that he had the whole summer, he got married for one, but the other thing he said I asked him what he focused on game wise, and he said perimeter defense. So there you go. Defensive player of the year. And how's he spend his summer? Working on defense.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So we'll move on to Xavier. Now, Xavier's been kind of cursed over the last few years in terms of injuries. They lost two really significant players in Quincy Oliveri, who I believe led the Big East in scoring, and Desmond Claude, who was an up-and-coming wing who transferred to USC. But they bring back Davian McKnight, one of the best passers in the conference. Dalen Swain, who had a great freshman season last year, shows potential in a lot of different areas. Athletic, can rebound, can block shots, can make steals. Offensive game is probably trailing his defensive game right now. And two veterans who've had a lot of injury trouble are both back, and that's Zach Fremantle, Jerome Hunter. They're both power forwards. And I talked to Jerome for quite some time, and he said he's ready to roll. And Zach also is ready to roll. In terms of the portal, they really didn't have any significant freshmen coming in, but in the portal, they got Ryan Conwell, who was probably the best pro prospect on that great Indiana State team from last year. They get Cameron Fletcher of Florida State, who sat out most of last year with injury. They get Big John Hughley, who's lost a lot of weight, by the way, folks. Power forward center who can shoot it. He comes in, started at Pitt, and then went to Oklahoma. He's now Xavier, and the aforementioned Dante Maddox, who lit it up as a shooter last year, also can play make. One significant transfer that they just recently lost, who could have been a valuable reserve on this team, is Lassina Traore from Long Beach. He got injured recently and will miss the entire season. So what do you make of Xavier? Can they avoid the injury bug and make the tournament?
Let's hope. I mean, it's not looking good with the Traore injury, and then you have Fremantle and Hunter that didn't play last year. So now it's like, hey, we really need you to step in even more with the Traore injury, and they're both coming off injuries of their own. So hard to say, but if they stay healthy, this could be a damn good team. This is a very trendy, like, sleeper team with the injury trouble they had last year. They return a bunch if healthy, and man, did they reload as well as anybody in the portal. They're shooting, they're scoring, they have size with the Fremantle and Hunter, like returns being healthy. There's a lot to like about this team, Rich. They can be top 5, they can make it back into the tournament, and Conwell's automatically going to be one of the best players in the Big East. This is one of the best players, best scorers in the league right away. So there's a lot to like about this team. Offensively, I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the Big East. Defensively, we'll see if it gets there, but they're going to put up some points. I think Sean Miller's coming back with a vengeance this year. They're going to be top 5. However, I would probably swap. The preseason poll has Xavier 3, St. John's 5. I would swap them.
Yeah,
I would switch them out.
I thought St. John's was 4. I thought St. John's was 4.
No, I think it went UConn, Creighton, Xavier, Marquette, St. John's.
Oh, okay.
Preseason poll.
Yeah.
But they're gonna be firmly in there.
I forgot to mention Marcus Foster from Furman, another transfer. 17 points per game last year. So I mean, and he's going to be coming off your bench most likely. Dante Maddox may be coming off the bench, as like a 6th man. So it all depends on how they want to go. If they want to play big, small, I'm not sure how they're going to want to do it. Should be interesting. Alrighty. So the next team on our list is Marquette, and of all the teams in the conference, they bring back the most. However, the two guys that they did lose were their 2 best players last year. Point guard Tyler Kolek, Oso Ighodaro, center, They both went to the pros, and Marquette had a big three, and now they kind of have a big one in Cam Jones, and then they have a bunch of good players like Stevie Mitchell, David Joplin, Ben Gold, Sean Jones, Chase Ross, Trey Norman. All these guys are talented players, but none have shown that they can be star players, or so that makes me a little concerned. I also Sean Jones, who should start at point guard for this team, but he told me at media day he's only about 75% recovered from his ACL injury that he suffered last January. With that said, he might start the season on the bench with Cam Jones playing at point guard. That puts a lot on Cam Jones. In the portal, Marquette doesn't like the portal. And they didn't bring in anybody from the portal. And then in terms of recruits, they brought in two nice recruits, both 4-stars, forward Demarius Owens, number 63 in the composite, and power forward Royce Parham, number 103 in the composite rankings. So what do you make of this Marquette team? Do they have enough to be in the top 4 here?
They will be in the mix for sure. They'll be in the mix for sure. I think this is one of the more interesting case studies. You look at every team you've gone over, with the maybe exception of UConn, and UConn did add a couple players in the transfer portal. But Xavier, St. John's, we'll talk about Villanova. They went crazy in the transfer portal. This is the one team that didn't. This is going to be an interesting story to follow as Shaka Smart bets on all his guys he has in house getting better. And it's tough because the point guard position, you're absolutely right. Like, Sean Jones is going to be on the shelf after tearing his ACL in January. We're not even at the 10-month mark here. By the time the season rolls around, it was going to be tough for him to be on the floor. But Cam Jones is now going to have to operate as really like the lead initiator on this team, but also the leading scorer.
Right.
So you're absolutely right that he's going to have a lot on his plate, because he's going to have to be the point guard, and he's going to have to be basically the shooting guard as well. He's going to have to play both. Defensively, I'm worried a bit as far as rim protection goes with Iguodala leaving.
Yep.
Because Ben Gold's going to be his 3rd year in the program, which is nice, but Iguodala was so good at so many different things. He was a terrific vertical athlete and could block shots. And how about a terrific passer as well? Just a very, very heady, just a very smart player that's not going to be easily replicated. But
no, Ben Gold, there's no way he's going to be Iguodala. The only thing you can say positive there is Ben Gold is a better shooter.
Yeah.
But everything else, Ben Gold is inferior to Iguodala.
Exactly. So they'll still be in contention for sure. Breakout guy on this team, I think Zayd Lowry's in for a big year. They're going to need another scorer off the bench, especially with Sean Jones not playing. And I think Zayd Lowry's going to be the guy that can step up, can score, and do it on both ends here. So this is still going to be a very competitive team, Rich. Don't get me wrong. But not having a guy like Tyler Kolek to alleviate the stress on Cam Jones last year, the stress on Joplin to stretch the floor. It's a lot going to be on Cam Jones' shoulders here. I don't think the offense will run quite as smoothly without having your point guard in there and Sean Jones, without having Kolek. But I still think they'll be very good, and it'll be a very interesting story to follow as everybody loads up the portal, and this is the one team that doesn't. But they will still compete for the top 5, absolutely.
Okay. Now, the one team I'm having a really hard time gauging is our next team on our list, Villanova. But before I go into where I think this year's version's team is, I just would like to review the teams that the players that left this team last year. And I just find it unbelievably interesting. TJ Bamba was a pro prospect. Didn't have a bad year, but he moves on to Oregon. Tyler Burton has been a pro prospect his whole life. He gets to Villanova. He doesn't even get a sniff at the draft. Justin Moore, considered a draft prospect his whole career, up until Kyle Neptune gets there. Of course, that also coincided with injuries, but Justin Moore doesn't get a sniff at the draft. Hakeem Hart had been considered an NBA draft prospect for his entire career. He goes to Villanova. He doesn't get a sniff at the draft. I just want to point out that if you want your draft stock to drop from maybe the 5th overall pick to the 20th overall pick and you go to the Rockets, or if you just want your draft stock to drop completely off so nobody even remembers you exist, just go play for Kyle Neptune. All right, so who returns for, by the way, Brandon Housen also left. I like his game. He's a good shooter. He went to Kansas State. Mark Armstrong also went into the draft, even though he wasn't close to being ready. So, yeah. Who's left? Eric Dixon, of course, he's kind of Mr. Do Everything for Villanova. Jordan Longino, who I talked to at length at Media Day. He says he's healthy and raring to go. Wooga Poplar comes in through the portal. He had an off year, but he was hampered by injuries most of the season. So I expect Wooga to, I really like his pro potential. God, why did he go to Kyle Neptune? He's most likely going to just fall off the draft board. But anyway, he shouldn't. He's an ultra talented player, and if he's healthy this year, it should show up. Enoch Bouquet comes in, a big center from Fresno State. He was a former high recruit who's never quite lived up to his potential. He comes in at center. Jameer Brickus, a little explosive point guard from LaSalle, comes over. Tyler Perkins, who had a really solid freshman season at Penn, comes in at guard. Chris Parker, who redshirted at Alabama last year after coming in as a top 100 recruit, also joins the team. Villanova also had a decent freshman recruiting class, including Matthew Hodge, power forward at number 70, Josiah Mosley, a wing at number 182, Alexander
Gavalyagov.
I can't even say it when you say it. Gavalyagov. A combo card from BC Balkan, not rated, obviously. And Malcolm Thomas, also a 3-star, comes in. Hodge, I believe, is banged up and didn't play in Villanova's last exhibition game. I'm not sure about how serious that is.
Yeah, so Hodge has an eligibility issue. So God knows how long that's going to take to resolve if you got to put your faith in the NCAA. So who knows what happens with that. Last year,
with grades?
it's his initial eligibility. I don't know if it's like high school classes that didn't transfer. It's something going on right now. Like, this is a high school to college transition type thing. But I got to interview Ashley Howard, and we talked to him about, like, hey, what were the shortcomings for last year's team that didn't allow this team to make the tournament?
Did he point out his head coach?
He did not. But the point guard position, I think, is the biggest swing piece on this team. I'm a big Jameer Brickus fan. He's a tough dude. He's a pass-first guy. They needed somebody who was pass-first that could just create on their own, that could create an advantage, that could get by somebody, that could get into the paint. And he's a little guy, but he can do all that and then some, Rich. Very crafty with the ball, very sudden, very quick. He's going to be able to right the ship and do what Justin Moore, who is natural. Justin Moore's natural position was not point guard. And then correct. Mark Armstrong was a score first guy, not a pass first guy. So they didn't have a straw to stir the drink, if you will. And I think Jameer Brickus is going to be that guy, and their offense is going to be better. They also hired Jamie Young as an assistant coach who spent a long time in the NBA, was at Lemoyne last year with the Dolphins in their first year in D1. Offensively, I think they're going to be better. But but the defense, like you look at all the defense that goes out, they were all very versatile last year. Like they had Burton, they had Hart, they had Bamba, Justin Moore. They had a lot of guys that Ash Howard said, like, we had all the same guys pretty much. Like we had a lot of guys that did the same thing. We had a lot of guys that could play 2 through 4 versatile wings that were supposed to stretch the floor. And they don't have that necessarily this year, and they still have some versatility, maybe not as much as they did last year. But Rich, I think the pieces will fit better here. Eric Dixon's your star. They brought in Enoch Bawachi to be they brought in a real center to play next to him to kick him to the 4. They brought in a real pass-first point guard in Jameer Brickus. You have an off-the-ball scorer in Wooga Poplar who can shoot very well, big-time athlete. And I think there's some guys here that could, even being younger, could step into a role. Like Tyler Perkins, I think, is the 6th, 7th man right away. Has some experience under his belt. Chris Parker is like a point forward, is interesting. He was recruited heavily by Villanova coming out of college. Coming out of high school, and then he ultimately committed to Alabama. And Jordan Longino also is a glue guy. He can shoot. He can defend. His problem is he's just never. He's been banged up his whole entire college tenure. But on that Final Four team, people forget that he was getting rotation minutes on that team.
Yep.
And if he can stay healthy, it's a very, very solid starting 5. And I think a team. I think this is the 6th best team. I think they are right smack in the middle of the conference.
By the way, Eric Dixon looks like he's in tremendous shape.
Yeah, the last 2 years, that even hit me last year when I saw him play for the first time. I was like, he looked like he slimmed down, and he looks very good. And I think you're going to see him attack from the wing potentially a little bit more. Like, you're going to be able to see him, not that he hasn't shown this stuff already, but he's going to show you more than posting up a bunch. Now that they have an actual center in Enoch Bawachi, like, you're going to see him moved around a little bit more on offense. So I like this team. As the offseason went on, I like this team more. They're right smack in the middle for me. I think they're above Providence, but I think they're also just below UConn, St. John's, Marquette, Creighton, Xavier. Still think they can be solid. I think they're going to fight for a tournament berth. I'm not sure they're going to get it, but they'll be fighting for one.
If Jay Wright was coaching this team, we'd feel a lot differently about it. Tell me if Jay Wright wasn't coaching this team, you wouldn't have him ahead of Marquette, maybe ahead of Xavier.
Not going to deny that. He's one of my favorites ever. I'd trust him with 5 guys to the YMCA. Yeah.
And so that's why I said, I looked at the collection of talent the Villanova had, and I said, you know what? If everything falls into place here, this could really, really be a good team. But then I was like, shit, they had a ton of talent last year and they couldn't do anything. So that's why I have them right in the middle. All right, we'll move on. I'll stop beating up on Neptune. We have a whole season to beat up on him. What am I going to do? Jared Haas has been fired. He's no longer coaching. That only leaves Kyle Neptune for me to beat up on. All right, so now we move on to Providence. Devin Carter, of course, Player of the Year, gone. What a loss. Josh Udaro, really good player for Providence last year, gone. Ticket Gaines, also a good player, gone. All these guys went to the pros. Garway Dual transferred to Seton Hall. Didn't play a ton of important minutes for Providence, but he had potential to be a great player. Rafael Castro, backup center, moves on to George Washington. Bryce Hopkins is back. The Providence guys, I mostly talked to Bensley Joseph, were telling me, Bryce Hopkins is good to go, but he didn't play in the last scrimmage. I don't know if we're going to see him at the start of the season, but certainly Bensley Joseph was very encouraged. It didn't give me any inkling that Bryce wasn't anything but ready to go. So we shall see. Jaden Pierre actually came up lame before that scrimmage, also didn't play. He returns at point guard. Some of the big guys that got in from the portal, and when I say big, I mean big. When I say creased, Sandico from St. Joe's, big center. Bensley Joseph, a combo guard from Miami of Florida. Jabari, Abdur Rahim, small forward, wing from Georgia. Wesley Cardette, who's kind of wallowed in the mire at Chicago State, finally transferred out. He's a really solid player. And they also have a top 100 recruit at center, and I don't dare try to say his name. Oswin Poohoo, I don't know. It's a long one, folks, and he's a top 100 recruit, 4-star. Going to be behind Creased, so probably not in line for a huge amount of playing time, but he's there. This Providence team doesn't look bad. Could probably be really good if Bryce Hopkins is 100% and Crease Sandico takes his game up to the next level. This team could probably be pretty damn good.
Yeah, defensively, I think they'll still be solid. They were last year. Now they did have the best, one of the best defensive players in the country in Devin Carter. Here's my reservation about this team, Rich, is that offensively they were not good last year, and Devin Carter, some of the shots he was taking and making, and some of the hero ball he was playing for this team was pretty remarkable.
Yep.
How he was able to keep them afloat and keep them in games. And they weren't a very good shooting team either.
Yeah.
So that's where my kind of reservations are with Kim English and the Friars, is that I know Kim English teams embody their coach and they play very tough. They play good defense. Offensively, I don't know if they're going to be able to still figure it out if Bryce Hopkins isn't going to be 100% right away. Cardette's a good get, and I think he can put some points up in this conference. But if you look at his on-off numbers, like when he had to play up in competition, I get he's playing at Chicago State, one of the worst D1 programs in the sport. But when they did have to go up, now again, like the Northwestern game, they upset him. Like that was a big deal. He was good. But when he had to consistently play up, the numbers dipped. Yeah. So now that he's going to be playing in the Big East night in and night out, like I think it's fair to have questions about that. Rich Barron shot the lights out. They're going to need him to do that again for a team that doesn't shoot the ball well. Priest will help. I think his floor spacing, and not that it was a bad thing with Oduro, because that dude's footwork and his post-scoring ability were terrific. But Priest he can score in the paint because he's such a big dude, but he's a floor spacer as well, and I think can help open things up a little bit for him. So defensively, I know they're going to be solid. Offensively is my thing. I'm a little shaky on them, and here's the thing. I think Villanova and Providence, last year, they were great defensively, not good on offense. I trust Villanova more this year on the offensive end, and if they're going to be equivalents on defense, that's what's going to put Villanova over the top, and for me, why I have them above Providence.
Yeah. So, Villanova definitely has more firepower.
Yeah, so I'm just a little reserved on Providence because offensively, like here's the thing, Kim English, we know he can coach defense. He did it at George Mason as well. Offensively, it hasn't been there. Is he going to be able to do that this year with Hopkins maybe not being 100% to start the year and that bulk of responsibility scoring-wise being on him?
Right.
Those are my questions.
I hear you. All right, move on to Seton Hall. They've lost 5 of their best, their top 7 players from last year, including Kadari Richmond, also Dre Davis, small forward, who had a really good year last year, moves on to Ole Miss. Who comes back is Dylan Ade-Wusu and Isaiah Coleman. And then they brought in a crap load of guys from the portal, none of which are household names. A lot of these guys are kind of underachievers who never quite lived up to their recruiting billing. And I'd say the 2 or 3 with the most potential would be the aforementioned Garway Dual for Providence, who's a big combo guard. Scotty Middleton didn't have a great freshman year last year for Ohio State, but he was a 4-star coming out. Emmanuel Okafor didn't play a lot for Louisville last year, but when he did, he was efficient. So I would say they're the 3 most promising guys. Seton Hall didn't do great. They didn't get anybody above a 3-star in terms of freshmen. So I don't know. It just seems like, your best players are sophomores that you're waiting to see if they're going to turn into anything. Beside Cole, the 2 returners, and even Coleman is a sophomore coming off of a solid freshman year, but not an outstanding freshman year. So beside Wasu, he's the only real proven player on this team, and everybody else is not. And I just don't see where this team. They did bring in a lot of guys with some upside, but yeah, I'm just not excited about what Seton Hall's got going on here.
Yeah, this is a total byproduct of their NIL. It's not up to par with the rest of the league, which sucks. Because if you give Shaheen Holloway some NIL here, he's going to make a dominant force at Seton Hall. Now, here's the thing, Rich. I'm confident that Shaheen Holloway is going to be able to maximize the guys here. And I know there's not a lot of maybe proven stuff with some of these players he brought in, but I think Garway Dual works here, and I think Middleton works here. Like I trust Shaheen Holloway to maximize what he has here. If you think what you talk about Kyle Neptune, if he's a guy that does less with more, this is a guy that does more with less in Holloway. And I think it's going to work. I think it's going to work to a certain degree that they will still be competitive. They're going to be feisty. They're going to scrap. This is going to be a team that you're not going to want to play deep in the conference season. But they're losing a lot, and they just didn't back it up with the name and the talent that they had. And I think that's where it is like, I trust Shaheen Holloway to maximize what he has. I just don't know how much he has here and realistically how high of a ceiling they have.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm worried.
Yeah, but, I mean, in order for this team to actually make the NCAAs, I really think Duval and Middleton would have to really take huge leaps.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's just not there's not the talent and the firepower that there was last year. And it's unfortunate because I think Shaheen Holloway is a terrific coach, but they need some NIL there, man. They also
need new SIDs.
I'm not going to speak on that. I'll let you know. I'm not a part of that.
Neither am I, apparently.
No.
I didn't even seek them out though at media day because their team doesn't inspire me. So I'm thinking I'm not going to fight with them about going to their games when they don't look that good to begin with. So anyway, we'll move on to Georgetown, and I'm actually pretty encouraged about this Georgetown team. I think Ed Cooley has his team moving in the right direction. I wouldn't be shocked if they finished in the middle of the pack. I figure them toward the bottom, but not nearly going to be the punching bag that they used to be. Now they did lose a lot of guys from last year, but nobody I think they're going to lose a lot of sleep over. Guys like Rowan Brumball and Dontrez Styles, Supreme Cook, Jay Heath, all gone. But I don't think those are huge losses. Jaden Epps, who averaged almost 18 points a game, comes back. Drew Felder, who had a really nice freshman season. He's a center power forward. He comes back. And in the portal, they bring in Malik Mack, who was coming off an outstanding freshman season at Harvard, freshman of the year in the Ivy League. Michael Peavy, who's bounced around for a few schools, last at TCU. He's kind of like a defensive ace at the wing. He comes in. Jordan Burks, who was a sophomore last year, Kentucky, didn't get a ton of playing time. He comes over. Curtis Williams, also another guy who was a freshman last year. So these 3 guys that were freshmen last year. But anyway, Curtis Williams, a wing from Louisville, 4-star. Coming over. And then in the recruiting, they really did a nice job as well. They bring in Thomas Sorber, a center who was a top 50 guy. They bring in, I think it's Kayvon. Yeah, Kayvon Moretti.
Yep.
Yeah, number 72. Julius Halifonia, a center from the NBA Academy in Australia. He's number 101 in the composite rankings. So a lot of nice pieces here. You know, the backcourt of Epps and Malik Mack is exciting, though small, tiny. But they also have some really big guys. You know, two freshmen. You know, big guys plus Felder. Is still there. Yeah. So I think this team is definitely on the upswing.
A little bit. I worry about the defense, and I'll tell you why, because their rim protection was bad last year. I saw them play at Villanova. It was the worst 40 minutes I saw a team play all season. In person. In person. They played the worst game I'd seen anybody play all season. That rivaled Bucknell in their first year, were the first time ever head coach and John Griffin, and that was like their fourth game. And this team was in February, and Ed Cooley was like, I'm not happy with where we are this late in the season. Like, it was bad. But to remedy that, Micah Peavy's a really nice wing piece to have. We'll probably be guarding the best player and the best offensive player in the other team, night in and night out. Yeah, Thomas Sorber was a rock star in the Philadelphia Catholic League. Archbishop Ryan made the final 2 of the 3 years that he was there, and they never quite got their first Catholic League title, but they came close, and he was electric to watch. I mean, he's got airplane wings for arms. He's a super athlete, plus length. Like, he's got the makings to be a damn good rim protector in the Big East. The problem is he's going to be tasked with a lot of that right away. He's going to have to learn on the fly here because their defense was not good last year. They played the worst 40 minutes I saw a team play. And defensively, 2-point defense, one of the worst in the country, one of the worst in pretty much every metric you can have. He is going to be tasked with a lot of fixing that as a freshman.
Well, what about the kid? What about the kid from the African Academy? Because I think he's even bigger.
Well, that's the thing is like there's young players that like losing Supreme Cook, I think, is actually a bigger loss than people realize because they don't have like experience really coming back. Was not a huge Drew Fielder fan, to be quite honest with you. Like, I don't think he's not going to protect the rim the way a Sorber.
No. But he's a good offensive player.
But their defense was horrific. Like,
right, no,
like
I get it.
Defense was legitimately one of the worst in the country.
I get it.
So they're tasking some really young players to have to fix that right away. And when you have a league that's got a Samson Johnson, that's got Eric Dixon, that's got Kalk Brenner. You know what I mean? These guys that have been in the league a while, been on good teams, and put up numbers. I mean, if Zach Fremantle and Jerome Hunter come back healthy, like, there's some really good bigs in this team that have been in this conference for quite some time that these guys are going to have to hold their own against. And I think it's going to be up and down as pretty much any freshman season is. Having its bumps and it's good and it's bad. So I think they'll be better, but defensively that will take them as far as they're going to go. If they're going to be bad again, well, they're only going to win a couple conference games. But if they can fix the defense, like offensively, like there's some pop here. Defensively, they got to get it fixed. But I like Sorber right now. I like it down the line, and then I think Peavy is a terrific addition. Because you have Epps and you have Mack that can score, so let's get them a wing in there who can stick on the best offensive player of the other team every night. I like them. They're not going to finish higher than the bottom 3 in this conference, though. I think there's still a lot of work to be done with the Hoyas.
Right. Well, when I look at the totality of the talent going out the window, and I look at the talent coming in, I really like the difference of what's coming in versus what went out. So that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, they're all young. I mean, 3 of the 4 transfers are sophomores, and 2 of those sophomores didn't play much last year. And then, 3 of their main players that are probably going to be in the rotation are going to be freshmen. So yeah, there's a lot of youth here, and Felder too, sophomore. So I mean, this is a team of freshmen and sophomores. So yeah. And then when Ed Cooley goes to Virginia, who knows who will be coaching this young bunch?
Ryan Odom's going there. Book it. Write it down now. Ryan Odom's going there.
All right. So now we'll move on to Butler. Butler brings back a good, they bring back 5 of their top 8 players. Their big loss was Posh Alexander, who moved on to Dayton, but they still have their nice wing combo of Jemiah Telfort and Pierre Brooks or Telfort. That those were their three best players last year. Two of the three return. Butler was not very good last year. Who comes in from the portal? Kobe King, who had a nice year with Tulane. He's a very speedy guard. He's not going to be the defender that Posh Alexander was, but I think he brings more better overall offense. Patrick McCaffrey, who had a very dismal year last year with his father at Iowa, transfers over. Jamie Kaiser, was former high recruit, former four-star, comes in from Maryland after not playing much at Maryland. I don't know if this Butler team's any better than last year. Maybe a tad, but I'm not too excited.
Yeah, I mean, they bring back their two best players, but besides that, like I agree with you. Patrick McCaffrey, funny. I think the connection here is Connor McCaffrey, his brother, is actually GAing for them. So nice little connection there. Yeah, Kobe King comes in, I think, can emulate DJ Davis a little bit. Maybe not quite the scorer, but as a little kind of twitchy, fast guy, can come in there and add that at the point guard position. I think this is another team, Rich, that like Seton Hall, this is a byproduct of their NIL not being up to the rest of the conference. They're a big brand in a good league in Indianapolis. I think they should be, with Dad Mata, I think they should be attracting more talent than this. And I think the NIL is to blame. And I think it's the fundraising and the money that's going on there that's to blame. So, look, don't forget last year, Rich, this is a team that was flirting with the tournament.
Yeah, for a while.
They were.
They kind of petered off toward the end, but
exactly. They played a game at Villanova that was almost like a loser leaves town game. Like, well, the winner keeps their hopes alive, the loser's done. And they had Posh Alexander, I think, 4 threes the first half of that game, and then I don't know if he hit another one the rest of the game, and they just kind of fell off. So I like Dad Mata, man, but I don't think he's the NIL resources to be as successful as he can be. And it's great you brought your two best scorers back, but like you need a Finley, Bizjack, and a Landon Moore to give you more. Like you need some breakouts here, and you need these transfers to be good quickly, or I don't know how good they can be. And they could potentially be bottom 3 in the conference. I think there's potential for that.
Right. Now we move on to DePaul, who's, boy, Ray Meyer must be rolling around in his grave every year. This team has just been dismal. And, you look at the talent that's leaving, which is everyone. Everyone who was on the team last year is gone. And you look at the guys coming in, I would say there's definitely more talent coming in than going out, but I'm just not overly excited about that. I mean, the most exciting piece coming in is Layden Blocker, who didn't play much at Arkansas last year. He was like number 34, I believe, in the composite ranking, so he's close to a 5-star last year. He's a point guard. He should be the bright spot on this team, but like I said, didn't play much last year, didn't show a ton last year, so we shall see. NJ Benson comes over from Missouri State. He's a nice defender. Isaiah Rivera is kind of like a journeyman in college. He played at Colorado State, played at Illinois Chicago, kind of had a breakout year last year, but now he moves up again in class. So Connor Enright was a nice point guard for Drake last year. He comes over. David Skagaman, a power forward who's a good offensive player. He didn't play the full season last year, but when he was very efficient offensively. So there are some of the best names coming over. I just think, basically starting from scratch, no real established veterans here that you can bank on. I think it's going to be another long year for DePaul.
Yeah, I think you have to give Chris Holtman a pass here, having to replace literally an entire freaking roster.
Right. No.
Because everybody left. And it's the right move to not bring anybody back. Like, this was not a good team. And they lost to a bunch of teams that they shouldn't. They were getting, by halftime, it seemed like the game was over because, they're just getting steamrolled here. They played, I think it was 3 games in the Big East that were decided by single digits, one of which was I think 4 if you include the tournament. lost to Villanova, which they had Nova on the ropes. My hats off to them. They played their ass off that game.
My hat's off to Kyle Neptune for that one.
Yeah, jeez, it's never gonna end.
Nope.
I mean, I think there's some upside swings. Yes, like I think Rivera could put up numbers. I think Blocker could potentially put up numbers. Like, how fast can you mesh 10, 11 new guys here and a new coach in a new spot? Like, look, the arrow can only go up from here. We have very low expectations for DePaul. The arrow could only go up. It was probably the worst season. If you include the Big East as like the Power Six, so to speak, because in basketball, they're a power conference. Basketball-wise, Big East a power conference. If you include Big East and you want to call it Power Six, this is probably the worst Power Six team of all time. If not, it's really close. Last year's team was. So I have very low expectations for them, but I think Chris Holtman is a high floor coach, so to speak. Like I feel like I know what I'm getting, and he will stabilize things here.
Yep.
But will that happen? I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what to expect from this team, though. If they're in the cellar, fine. It would be hard to be as bad as they were last year. The arrow can only go up. When you take over a program that was this bad, you have circumstances like this where you need to replace everybody. I think they're the last place team. It's just the circumstance that they're in.
Yeah. I was just yes, I agree. Sorry. I was reading something you wrote, so I was but I totally agree. I think Holtman is a good choice for the job, and I think eventually they'll get it together. But yeah, it's gonna be a long process. All right. So while you were saying that, I was just glancing at our predictions because I was shocked. They looked like they were copied and pasted.
Yeah.
So, but kind of funny. They're also the coaches poll at the Big East is saying too. So I mean, there is like no differential here. What I was trying to figure out is how we differ with our four selections. So you have, well, first of all, we're both picking UConn as the champion. Jake is likes UConn a little better than I do. But we both still think they're going to be the conference champ. We both like, so you say St. John's, Creighton, Xavier, Marquette.
Here's what I'll say about the at-larges. I think the top five in the Big East in the preseason poll get there. And I don't know if Nova or Providence will for sure get a spot, but I think they will both be bubble teams come March. Okay. I don't know if they'll get there. I think they'll be in that conversation. I think potentially you could have 6 teams in the Big Dance. And it's Nova and Providence that are going to fight potentially for that, to be that 6th team. I think they're going to be bubble teams. I think these are going to be like from Valentine's Day on, every game is going to be important for them as they try and get on the right side of the bubble. So
that's what I was trying to figure out what you had written there. So, okay, now I understand. Yeah. And I am in very similar mode. I said the Big East will get 4 at-large teams. I said St. John's, Creighton, Xavier are in. And then I said the last at-large will either be Marquette, Villanova, or Providence. Do I think they could get a total of 6 teams, 5 at-larges? Maybe. Not very bullish on that, though. I think most of the teams in this conference have taken a step back. So except for St. John's and Xavier, Villanova maybe has also made a step forward, but they underachieved so badly this year. That's hard, or last year. It's hard to make that statement. All right. So for player of the year and defensive player of the year, we have the same guy. Jake and I both picked Ryan Kalkbrenner for both. Interestingly, Kalkbrenner will win if he wins the defensive player award, this will be his 4th time doing it. I think Patrick Ewing is the only, no, I think Alonzo Mourning also did that. Or no, wait, Ewing and Mourning, I think, won it 3 times, not 4. I don't know. I have to check into that. I will check into that, and next time we talk about the Big East, I'll bring that up. I have the literature downstairs. Interestingly, Jake picks Kadari Richmond as his dark horse for Player of the Year, and if I had to pick a dark horse for anything, I would have picked Kadari Richmond for dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. And then we both like Liam McNeely for the Freshman of the Year in the conference. I don't think they pick a newcomer of the year. They just pick a freshman of the year.
Yeah, I didn't see a newcomer on there last year.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are our predictions. And that's the end of our preview portion of the show. And now we'll bring on our guest, Dante Maddox Jr. Our special guest today is Xavier guard, Dante Maddox Jr. Last season with Toledo, Dante was an all-MAC selection, averaging 15.6 points, 4.3 rebounds, 2.8 assists, and 1.4 steals per game, while shooting 44% from the floor, 40% from deep, and 86% from the free throw line. He ranked in the top 5 of the conference for free throw percentage, effective field goal percentage, offensive rating, win shares, and plus minus. Welcome back to the show, Dante. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I didn't even know some of that information. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, you had a great season. And I gotta tell you, I the number might be greater. I was just trying to remember, but I think you'll be the 5th player that I've interviewed multiple times. And of the 4 previous ones, all 4 played in the NBA, and 3 of them are still there. So that's good. And
That's
and then when you told me you were going to be in your car, then I thought, how many guys have I interviewed while they're in their car? And Baylor Shireman was one. My last interview with Baylor, he was in his car. Jamari Bouye, who I believe is on a 2-way, or he was on a 2-way.
from San Fran.
Yeah. And Foos Traore, who's still at BYU. They were all 3 in their car. And then Eric Reynolds for St. John's, he topped y'all. He got interviewed while he was getting his hair cut at a barbershop.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
All right. So how have you been since we last talked? It's been over a year. We talked late last August, I believe.
Yeah. It's been good. It's been good. A lot has happened. A lot has changed. Obviously, I don't go to Toledo anymore. I spent my last season I was there, and it went well. We won 20 games, or however, over 20 games. We ended up being the number 1 seeded team in the MAC. We ended up losing in the MAC tournament, but I think overall, as a year, that we had a pretty good year, and I think it was part of the reason why entering the transfer portal, I was able to kind of end up at a place like Xavier. So that was pretty exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. When you went into the portal, I assume you had quite a few options. What drew you to Xavier?
A lot of things. I'll say the biggest thing is just the vision of being really good and having a genuine big piece in that. I seen that. I think a lot of the schools that I reached out, I would have also had a big piece in everything, but I just felt something. I feel like Xavier got something that the country is really like sleeping on. And I'm just big on being able to find genuine people. And the way that they recruited me in the portal from day one versus the day I committed, the sincerity and just the intent was always consistently the same. And I appreciated that. And it made me feel like I was a priority and genuinely wanted. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm starting to over the last 2 years, started last season, and it's continuing into this season. And I'm starting to hear, when I'm at different events or talking to different people about stories about how schools aren't keeping up with their promises. So yeah, I guess you really have to be careful when you make those decisions.
$1,000.
And I'm glad you landed at a good place. Are you still a communications major? I noticed they have you listed as a grad student. So
Yeah, I got my degree in media communications. Now I'm at grad school and I'm working to finish my master's in athletic administration here at Xavier. Um, I yeah, I started taking classes in the summer, like the first session of the summer, so I can be able to finish, at the end of the school year. It's the timetable, so I'm very excited about that to be able to get a master's degree. So
so you're
it's a
still looking after basketball's over, still looking for something that would be, you'd still be involved with the sport
yes,
on some level.
yep, still the same, still the same.
Well, no, good. I think you'll be very good at that. In fact, if I remember correctly, we offered you an internship.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, um, so when you chose Xavier, you knew it was going to be a jump up, and as opposed to, you know, I don't know. I would say that maybe three or four of the guys on your team last year probably could get regular minutes at a school like Xavier, you being one of them. So how's that transition being that jump up in talent? Is it greater or less than what you expected, the transition?
Um, it's I'm not gonna say it's either greater or less. Just seeing it on the day to day is something to get used to, though. I definitely think that we have a very talented group, a lot of depth, a lot of maturity, a lot of experience, and I'll say that's was something that I think was kind of a fresh air, just being around people who have been through so much in the basketball in college, just in the basketball world, has been to the highest stages, have played in Madison Square Garden, have made it to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA Tournament, who've done all the things that I'm excited to be a part of and want to do. So just seeing how they work, seeing how uh people take care of their bodies, just seeing like just the resources, it's just different at this level versus the mid-major level. I have a newfound appreciation for all of it, and in particular, I've been able to kind of be like a sponge and kind of use everything around me to refine and retool and help grow in all the aspects of my game. So I'm excited, and that's been one of the best parts so far for me.
One thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I seem to notice between mid majors and the higher schools like Big East, ACC, so forth and so on, is generally the size of the teams. And the second thing is how better in shape they seem to be. Um, are those two? Would you agree with those observations?
100%, you spot on with that. I'll say for me personally, just the how serious the weight room is here at Xavier, and how serious being in the best shape of your life. Like I knew that was the pitch, coming into, me making my decision here, but being here, man, like it was tough. It was an adjustment on the court and in the weight room. But I think it's gotten me where I'm for sure in the best shape of my life. I'm as strong as I've ever been. I'm excited to just see that translate, on the basketball court, which I feel like it already has, but in a real game, I'm excited to play, and just see how that translates. But it's definitely a difference. It's a difference in how we work. It's a difference in how we we lived in what's important, what's not, and just yeah, stuff like that. It's night and day. For at least for me, it's been.
And Xavier has a great track record too of taking mid-major guards and turning them into, all conference like players, with the latest being Quincy Oliveri last year, who I believe led the Big East in scoring, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And now with the Lakers. So what parts of your game have you been working on the most since you left Toledo?
Really, refining my decision making. Continue to just grow as a basketball player, as a guard. I think Xavier is a big place that kind of, in a way, plays a lot of positionless basketball, or we have a lineups that play a lot of positionless basketball. And being that, you just have to be able to make the reads and take advantage of the advantages that we have, of the mismatches that we might have, whether that might be on the perimeter or that might be in the interior on the inside. Like, that's one thing I'll say that's also been the difference. It's just the overall threats that we have at every aspect. Like, there's not many basketball players that have, at least I think that's just the way that Sean Miller recruits as well.
Dante, when you look over the roster, and I'm scrolling up there right now, you guys seem to have a ton of talent at guard. You got David McKnight, who's like an assist maestro. You got Ryan Conwell, really good all-around guard. You got yourself, combo guard, and then you got Marcus Foster, who I believe averaged over close to 20 points a game last year. So, and there's other guys too, but I'm just naming the main guards. I guess losing Lucina Traore, and when did that happen, by the way? Recently?
Yeah, it happened like during one of our practices. So yeah.
Okay. And he's gone for the season, so that makes you a little more thin in the front court. So the way I hear it, Zach and Jerome are pretty much good to go. Zach especially, and of course
both of them are practicing, playing in the full swing. So they both played in the exhibitions,
right,
and they're doing the thing.
And I know I shared this from you on Big East Media Day. I made the biggest mistake I've ever probably made in my professional career, which was I wasn't even looking at faces. All right, everybody was like in sitting at a long table, okay, and there were people lined up to interview him. So you guys had Zach, Jerome, Ryan, and
Davion,
right? And I heard someone say Jerome right in front of me. So I thought I was in the Jerome line. And I have to admit, I haven't seen Ryan Conwell as much as anybody else. So it didn't even register in my mind that I wasn't talking with Jerome. I just heard someone say Jerome, and I started asking him Jerome questions. And he was kind of like doing his best to answer, but looking at me like I was nuts. And so then I go over to Jerome because I knew what Zach and Davion looked like. So then I go over the Jerome line, and that should have got me right there because, he's bigger guy. But no, it didn't register. And so I started asking Jerome Ryan questions, and he's like, I'm Jerome Hunter, right? I'm like, oh my God. But anyway, I ended up having a long conversation with Jerome. And then I went back to Ryan and talked to Ryan, asking him Ryan questions. So anyway, most embarrassing thing I think I've ever done professionally. But so when you look at the team, losing Lucina, I assume hurts some. But how would you assess how the team is shaping up? You guys have, swingmen like Dalen Swain and Cameron Fletcher. So roster seems really well balanced. I guess what I'm trying to ask is two pieces to this question. Lucina Traore kind of seemed like he was going to be your rim protecting guy, and you lost him. And also with all these guards, Where do you think you fill in? Are you going to be starting? Are you going to be the sixth man? How do you think that's all going to work out? And also, how much of a playmaking role might you have? So I guess there's three parts to this. As opposed to, you mainly were a scorer last year at Toledo, but you had two other guards, just kind of like you do this year, that you could play off of. So, I mean, they could also do the playmaking. So, yeah. So we'll start with Lucina. I'll throw that out with you. How big of a loss is that, or how big of a concern is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a loss. Cena is a wonderful player. He brings a spirit, an effort, just a demeanor that he brings to the game, a passion that he plays with, that is something that isn't extremely common, let alone replaceable. So that's definitely a loss. It's not just, a lot of him walking around at college basketball who didn't average the double-double, in years prior. With that being said, so definitely have to pay respect to all that he brings to the table. And it kind of shifts our team slightly, but I still think we're in a really good place. I think we're gonna be able to be very successful. And I think the ceiling is still extremely high for this team. So yeah. When it comes to me personally and my role here, I think I don't see my role here being really any different than my role has been anywhere else. I think what I bring to the table is what this staff and this team values about me and my playmaking, scoring ability, ability to bring care factor, abilities to bring experience and winning. I think those are all very important elements to the piece of the puzzle. Now, when it comes to how that looks, whether I start or don't start personally, is something that I'm personally not extremely worried about, and I can't really answer that at the moment in terms of knowing exactly how the future is going to go. If it had to start today, I know I'll for sure be coming off the bench, but I think the way it's kind of set up is with our depth and the way that we play. I think we kind of look at it as like we got like 8 starters. And honestly, it's a very deep team that on any given night, anybody can do amazing kind of winning things that can change the game. We have a lot of those type players. So for me personally, I'm not very just caught up on in terms of starting or not starting. I'm just trying to focus on making sure that my role, my production is there with the time and everything that I do have, and that I provide all that I'm able and capable of, whether that's starting, whether that's on the bench. I don't think that changes too much for me. So being able to produce and bring what I bring to this team, I think it's been important. It's been my focus.
Right. I mean, you guys, I would think offensively are just going to be outstanding. There's you guys could put 5 guys out there all at the same time who could shoot and drive. John Hughley is one guy I didn't mention. Big guy. And I've been told that he's lost close to 40 pounds.
More than that.
More than that, huh?
That's doing him a disservice. He's definitely lost over 40 pounds. I would say probably close to plus 50, to be honest, around that range. But he's been doing an unbelievable job. We, the guys, the teams, we've seen the sacrifices that he's been making to try to fit with our style of play. We got one of the fastest paces in the country. And, John wasn't always in styles that required him to have the body that he has at this current moment. And I know that was a process. We've seen it every day, just the gradual transformation, and how even now, I mean, I think it was not even a week ago, I said, man, you look amazing, bro. Like, and saying that genuinely out of the bottom of my heart, because just seeing where he came from to where he at today, I mean, it's actually unbelievable seeing the transformation like that, like up close and personal. Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. And then to have Zach and Jerome back after all those injury troubles is or health issues, whatever you want to say, is tremendous too. So I was very happy to see Jerome and see that he was healthy. So your team expectations. I think you were picked to finish third or fourth in the coaches poll.
Third.
So you guys, what are you talking amongst yourselves? How far do you think this team can go?
I think our ceiling, I think our ceiling is high. I think our baseline is starting off pretty high as well. I think we're a mature group, and I think we got a lot of people who are motivated by trying to win, from a team morale perspective, but individually. I think, like you said, guys like Zach, Jerome, guys like John, guys who have been through a lot, physically, through injuries and coming back and have withstand some tough hardships and everything to get back to where they at today. So I think that gives everybody, I just named a couple,
Right.
Just a few, but I think that gives everybody just a new, just profound respect, love, and appreciation for where they're at, which I think is shown out there on the court. I think it's everybody's mind and heart is in the right place. I think we're all in. I know that's our slogan. That's our slogan. But being all in. But I really think I see that, on the daily with our team. So in terms of what's the expectations, I think our expectations is to win every game that we play. That's the goal. That's what we want. So I mean, we don't have to lose. You know what I'm saying? And I think with the team that we have that mindset going in that there's nobody in the country that we can't lace them up and be on top on after 40 minutes.
Right. I found out that they call you Tay. So I've known you for a little over a year, but I've never called you Tay. Who does call you Tay? Just teammates or family too?
Family, teammates, people who just have gotten to know me a little more past just the professional level of things. I think that's just kind of, and then here, they definitely call me Tay because on coaching staff, we have a Dante, not a Dante, but a Coach Dante Jackson. So, early on, it was a lot of confusion with people calling me Dante or not Dante, or people calling, Coach Dante, or whatever. So it was just easier to just be like, yeah, let's just call me Tay, it's all good. So
this is a Xavier nickname then, a name that started Xavier?
No, it's been a nickname my whole life,
okay.
Like the ones, my friends, they all call me Tay, growing up.
Did it have anything to do with you being junior? I mean,
Yeah. So my dad being Dante Maddox Jr., my family will always, it started off, Tay is just short. So it started off as growing up, like my family, the ones who know me for real, they know my nickname has always been Tay Tay. It's Tay Tay, or if my mom or anybody is serious and they calling me, I'm Lil Dante. But that's only if I'm, something happened and I might be in trouble. If I hear Lil Dante, then I know, oof, let me get there. But
for me, it was Richard. I was always Richie or Rich, but if I was in trouble, I was Richard.
Yeah. So That's usually how it goes. And it's funny because with my mom, me and my dad, I don't know how, it's just being in the same house for 18 years. You just know sometimes when she just calling on one of us and she just say Dante in our name, we know who she's talking about just by the tone of her voice. You be like, that ain't me, that's you. You know, like yeah.
So has anyone? And I'm just trying to find other reporters or other analysts who have made embarrassing mistakes like me. So has anyone ever asked you what your father's name is?
I think nobody's ever done that simply because I'm big on my last name and where I come from. I remember one of my first games at Toledo. We just got like our new jerseys, and one of the jerseys didn't have Junior on it. First thing my dad said was like, "Man, I ain't played since '97. I'm done playing basketball." So I mean, but me personally, I take a lot of pride in where I come from and who I am, and that last name of being a Maddox. You know, being a Maddox man, that's something that holds weight not only in my heart but in my family. I think I come from a long lineage of prideful, strong, independent men on both sides of my family, my mom and dad. But so that's why I think I always tried to make sure it was apparent that I wanted to be referred as Maddox Jr. because, that's who I am.
Right. I get it. All right, Dante, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate having you on the show again. And
Of course.
You have to come back when you go through.
Yeah.
Now, you're a senior, right?
Yes.
All right. So you'll be going through the draft process in the spring.
Yes.
So you have to come back and tie Baylor Shireman's record because Baylor
Okay.
Shireman has the record for 3 appearances. So you can tie him.
Okay.
All right, buddy. I wish you and the team the best, and I appreciate the time you've given us this week. And
thank you.
Yeah, have a good season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Will do. You
All
too.
right, and tell Tom I said thank you as well.
Okay, I will.
All right, Dante. Good talking to you.
Yeah.
All right, Jake. So that wraps up our Big East episode. Any final thoughts?
Ready to start some games, Rich. 6 days.
6
days till we're back. We're almost there.
You and your damn calendar. People are going to be like, they're going to be listening to some of our preview shows this week, and you're going to be saying, and there's only 21 days till the season starts. And they're going to be like, why the hell am I listening to this episode now? Well, because not much happens this time of year. It's when the season starts, so it doesn't really matter when we recorded it. All right. So as always, I want to thank our listeners, and I want to thank our special guest, Dante Maddox, for joining us. If you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back later this week, specifically really soon, to do what's up next. We have Big East. I think next is Big Ten. The Big Ten will be our next show, and we will have more special guests, at least one for that show I know of, and that would be Peyton Sanford of Iowa, sharpshooter, big wing. Excited to talk to him. All right, that's it, folks.